looks like everybody has been safely migrated. Good to see everybody again. Couple of different roles in this one. We should have Dawn Carey Henry with us. She is the Delegate Council Steering Committee lead. We have Elisa Powell, who will serve as the scribe. And again, Elisa, that means you report out when we all come back together. And then we have Ari Wilkins with us to monitor the chat. So as we move into focused discussion on collaboration, let's obviously be sure we have some recall to the communication breakout session and the charge to be kind of proactive representatives of our own organization, also to serve the larger community by staying connected to one another. So we're again going to kick off this session with a few poll questions. So let's start with the first poll, please. Hopefully everybody's okay with the attempts at humor.
No, some days I think the Pony Express will work just fine.
It might. All right, so yes, A, B, and C is the correct answer. That's what we were looking for. Virtual meetings, again, largely facilitated by NGS. In-person meetings largely facilitated by NGS, meaning bringing everybody together, providing the framework. And then C, between meetings on the member community platform. That's facilitated by you all. And again, we'll learn about how to utilize that construct as it gets rolled out over the summer, but that's really your opportunity for proactive communication. That community will only be as active as the community members make it. Any questions or comments about this poll? Okay, and go to the next one. Absolutely. All of the above. So sharing resources, creating kind of those libraries of resources that can be accessed by all of the community members. That's actually something that the higher logic communities will facilitate. Asking for and giving help, interactive community, proposing questions. Questions are great, but they need to be answered. So we need to have people in those communities interacting to help get those questions answered, sharing best practices, you know, kind of what I mentioned earlier about trying to replicate successes in the same breath, you know, talking about navigating obstacles, just as valuable as well. And then developing topics to elevate to NGS, making sure that we're aware of what we need to be talking about at the board table or at the staff table within NGS to best suit and serve the genealogy community at large. Any other questions or comments? Okay, next poll. I think we have one more poll question. Correct answer is 4. So there's going to be 3 virtual meetings, 1 in-person meeting in conjunction with the annual conference. So that's 4 total. Again, at the annual conference, we'll have in-person kind of networking around different topical areas and, configurations based on size and type of organization. So that will play into potentially how we conceptualize the online communities that we'll move into talking about in just a moment. Any questions or thoughts? How does that frequency, the number of meetings, and where they fall in the year kind of fit into everybody's schedules, given everything else you're doing at your own organization? Is that a big ask? Well, yeah. Understood. You need to know the dates.
Ken had his hand up.
I have a question. As I sit and listen to all this, I'm wondering for these meetings, are the right people going to be at the table? And by that, going back to what we did this morning, what the concerns were, I think it may take a different group. For example, if you want to talk about technical issues, i.e. websites, for example, that's not going to be the presidents of the organizations. That's going to be the person running the website or others, the program person, they want to talk to other program people. And have you taken any of that into account in how you're setting this up?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that might be an outcome or something that triggers additional conversation after we get through the exercise on how to configure the Higher Logic communities, because I think that's an excellent point. Higher Logic is designed can be very general, but it can also be very narrow. And sometimes you can be served by both things, some very general conversations that are applicable and you want kind of diverse perspectives, or you want a really narrow community of people focused on a very narrow need. So that's a good point. I think we should, once we get past the activity in this session, that can drive a lot of the conversation that we have. Any other commentary before we move on to the activity? Okay, so the activity it's another poll question, but it's really designed to get us thinking about how we would organize ourselves in these online communities. So if we can bring up the next poll question, take a little bit of time to think about these your responses, and you can have more than one. right, so I'm seeing a lot of feedback on size, type, geography, organizations seemingly with similar resources, so like organizations to my own. I do like the comment, those that have answers to my questions, because that's really what we are trying to figure out here. And obviously, a lot of the ones with the ability to answer questions are going to be the ones with like characteristics. So I understand that. But how else, what other creative ways could we configure groups in order to do just that, facilitate the most answers to the most questions?
Maybe versus size, big and small, maybe there could be struggling societies and very successful societies. Because the struggling societies probably have all the same type of problems, and the bigger societies can even get bigger and better. I don't know.
So would you put them all into the same group? So the struggling societies talk about try and jointly problem solve, or do you want to link organizations that are struggling to those that are successful?
I wasn't thinking of linking, but it could be.
Okay.
For example, we're a very big group and have a lot of money and a lot of resources and everything. And so many times I hear about the small struggling groups and I just say that's not us.
Right.
I think the only caveat of putting small struggling groups together is they might have a tendency simply to commiserate about their inability to do anything. What they really need is some help in how to get jump started, so they're no longer a struggling society.
They need ideas and thoughts for things they might do going forward, not focusing on what hasn't worked because we're small or because we're located here or there. Now, I think the other thing about sessions is groups is topics. People who are interested in specific topics. So if I'm really interested in technology, which I am, I'm more likely to want to be there, whereas a few of my board members and volunteers are less interested in sitting through sessions on technology, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in board development as well. And so, what kind of thing can be done there?
Okay.
Along those lines, we might be able to set up some kind of mentoring program for larger society, not to brag about how well we've done, but to help the smaller group realize how they could grow and get beyond struggling.
What do you
I
think?
think the other thing is that at the beginning of this whole workshop, you had said that it wasn't just for societies, but libraries and archives and museums and colleges. And to keep in mind that some of the things being discussed today are very targeted towards societies and don't really apply as much to libraries and archives and museums and colleges. So if there's a way to have something that brings libraries and archives and museums and colleges together to be able to discuss what's applicable to them and may not be applicable to societies, and then also have a way for those groups, those repositories, to interact with societies, because we obviously need to interact, but also keep in mind that there are some things that the repositories and the societies have to work with separately.
Nora, that's really great point, and I thank you for bringing that up. And I think it's great that we have a good representation today from some libraries, and you're the ones that are going to be able to tell us, NGS, what you need or how we can better support you, and how different genealogy groups and organizations can work with you and collaborate with you And I think, using the Higher Logic platform and getting discussions going there is going to be a real good avenue for you to find ways to help each other.
Susie, yeah.
What
Our
what do
society
you
doesn't
what do you
struggle.
consider a large group?
I don't know.
I think that, if you're going to do those sorts of things, you're going to have to define that. Is it 50 and smaller, 50 to 100? If you decide to divide by groups to discuss a certain topic, then you'll have to put some sort of parameters on it. And that would be, up to you to define it, you, the delegate. Of course, NGS can provide you statistics as far as, majority of the groups fall between this and that, or, give some guidelines that way.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I consider our group a small society because we're in a county of only 32,000 people, yet we have just under 200 members.
Which is large.
Well, right, except that a lot of our membership is not local. So that creates a challenge.
That's a good point.
Well, and that's what I was talking about. Our group is about 150, and I don't know how that compares. I don't know whether that's small or large.
Jerry has her hand up.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to say about the library issue is that our organization has a sizable library. Even though we are a genealogical society, a great deal of our work is involved in our library. So I think there is collaboration and help available between, I would like to see collaboration help available between standalone libraries and larger genealogical societies like ourselves that do have a significant library.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're talking about a couple of different things. Some of my takeaways are, we need to think about what happens in the meetings that occur and how those groups are organized when we come together, either virtually or in purpose. And then also what might happen in those online communities. And some of those configurations might be the same, and some of them might not be. I think what I'm hearing is there's enough diversity to create some pretty discrete groups, but there's also a desire to, communicate with the community at large, and you want different perspectives. So the way I've seen it configured before is that there's this open forum, which is kind of a catch-all. Everybody that plays in the kind of special interest groups also plays in the open community. And if you want to post a question to everyone, you can do that, and you can get kind of diversity of perspective and response. And then there are the more narrow communities. And the way we configure those, possibilities are somewhat endless, depending on how we classify your records in the system. But it sounds like we also have to gather more data in order to generalize what does small mean, what does large mean, what does X or Y mean, to make sure that we're potentially kind of drawing representative circles.
There's also a difference between societies that have facilities and have their own libraries, as well as, then the public libraries that have genealogical information. So, there's a little bit of a difference, where we specifically focus in our facility with only genealogical and records, whereas the public library in their genealogy room has more resource books and really do not have a lot of records.
And then you add in someone like us, where we are solely a special collections genealogy and history library with an archive, who also does exhibits and programs.
Okay, so I feel like this is gonna trigger potentially some surveying of this group to help make some decisions. What about topic-based forums or topic-based groupings at meetings?
You mean like special interest groups?
Well, I'm trying to think about less of, these characteristics, public versus in-house records, size or geography. Are there topic-based communities that we should also be considering?
Such as, how to do a digital newsletter if you've been doing paper, or whether you keep both, topics that your society might be trying to decide which way to go or need help and assistance getting from point A to point B.
Yes, I agree that there should be, but that topic may not apply to me as the delegate. It might need to be some other member of my society that needs to participate, so that it'd be nice if we could figure out a way to do that.
Right. So that gets back to, I think, Ken's original point is is there some flexibility in order to get additional representatives to interact in these communities? So, you have the right person, either the right subject matter expert or the right person asking questions in those communities. Right now, I do think kind of the concept is that delegate is the conduit for all things that would occur in the communities. But that's something
I agree. We as delegates would be painting with the broader brush back to NGS as responding delegates back to the whole group. But if it's going to be a matter where you're getting into the weeds with either be it the webmaster or the newsletter or journal editor or the programming committee, those are the best people to discuss on a society to society basis, to share ideas. What works, what broke for one society may also break for another. It may not. There's no need to keep reinventing the wheel. And if as we share our experiences with each other on the level of the program person or the web person or the newsletter / journal person, they are the best ones to exchange those ideas.
And this goes back to something I mentioned in the chat. If you're going to have like the main delegate meeting of the year be in person at the May conference, that's a big ask, because not all of these membership organizations are going to be able to send their delegate to a conference. It's not a guarantee that everybody goes to the NGS conference every year. That's a lot of financial and time. That's a big financial and time ask. And you're saying that like the main delegate meeting every year is going to be in person at that conference.
However, if we have 4 meetings a year and 3 of them are online, and I, as a small organization, have 1 delegate, if that delegate can attend the 3 online meetings, I realize it would be great if everybody could get to the main meeting in May, but maybe there would be somebody else from your organization who's going and could be the delegate alternate or something like that to attend the in-person.
So I bring this up again as the representative for the non-societies.
Right.
Some of us are employees of places, and we can't send a representative every year.
And some of us would be paying out of pocket to go to these things because our organization could never afford to send us. So.
Yes, I think having an option or an availability for a delegate or the representative of a society or a library or a university or an archives be able to perhaps attend the meeting virtually as a proxy-wise, rather than having to, as a couple people have mentioned, reach into their own pockets, or as employees, if you are in a small group, your organization, your company might not be able to afford to send somebody halfway across the country or all the way across the country to attend a 6-hour meeting one day.
Yeah, I mean, this is valuable feedback. I think, part of this plays into the fact that there are going to be virtual meetings 3 times a year. There are going to be these interactive communities that we need to establish to make sure we're supplementing any of those meetings that you might miss, because we know, it's going to be very difficult to get 100% attendance at any meeting, regardless of the delivery vehicle or the time it occurs. So we need to make sure that we have enough, communication vehicles that can be accessible, that there is a low barrier to playing in that space. So that's, this is good feedback to hear.
Could the national meeting in May, could the delegate meeting be hybrid? That way in-person people can go, and those of us who probably wouldn't be able to travel, can't afford to do that, could also attend.
Yeah, I think that's a big maybe. If I had more authority, I could respond, but I think that's, a maybe. I think the idea is to provide as broad an engagement opportunity as possible.
But to come back to my point, going back to what we talked about this morning, the whole structure of the council to kind of send things up to the NGS board. And I'm looking at most of these things, I don't think would require action by an NGS board. It would be people from members coming together, sharing ideas and solving their problems, or getting the information they need to solve their problems, or input, without there being any sort of action necessary by the board. Was that considered in the setup of the delegate council?
Yeah, Ethan, if you don't mind, I'll jump in here on that. But yeah, exactly. That's why we developed the 3 C's, and communication, collaboration, and council. So, and they all fit together. We're going to talk to each other and figure out how we can help each other. So communication, collaboration, and exactly what you said, Ken. Some of these things we're going to be able to solve ourselves. And then some of these things are going to be bigger issues that we would raise up to the board. But a lot of it is just being able to work together and solve those things together through our collaboration of, you've got success in here and you can share it. And, that takes that off of the agenda, if you will, for the larger items that might need more financial backing that NGS would be able to do to create programming and other resources for a larger support mechanism. Jerry has her hand up, Ethan. No?
Go ahead, Jerry.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I didn't pull it down.
For NGS to do something that supports communities, such as monthly presentations that we can present to our communities for free, or something that explains maybe one of the projects you guys are working on, or I don't know, something that has our communities invested in you also. Does that make sense? Like, we want our communities, we want our societies to realize the importance of the National Genealogical Society. And I think a lot of people are really confused about, other than being an organization, what you're providing, if that makes sense, on a personal scale.
To the individual rather than the organization itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there's 2 types of membership, right, Ethan?
Yes.
So there's an individual membership, where obviously it's individual, and then the organization membership, which is what we're here for today, as far as, and you're a delegate representing your organization. And so those are two different types of membership. And although I represent an organization, I'm also an individual member. And in my mind, I see that as two separate things I look for in my individual membership. I'm looking for education from NGS as far as maybe classes, receiving the NGSQ, educational through that way. Through being a delegate, I'm looking for a different type of education. It's organization resources and management, and what other groups have and how we can work together and share our resources. So does that help a little bit?
And obviously I'm in this meeting and I'm hearing what you're trying to accomplish, and then going back to my community and saying, or my society, and saying, we need funding to go to this conference. We need funding to be a part of this organization because they're going to teach me how to talk to other people. Is there going to be some kind of like presentation, like this is what we're doing for societies, or is that completely reliant on the societies to give back to their communities?
Well, I think largely it's about providing the framework for, again, being the convener is a big part of it. So providing the framework for organizations to interact, and then recognizing that the organizations have a lot of intellectual capital and experience and knowledge that they need to share across that network. And then NGS, again, the initiatives that NGS embarks on should be, to a degree, representative of what we're hearing from the delegates. So it's kind of that step ladder. The organization is represented through the delegate to NGS, and NGS theoretically makes representative decisions based on what comes out of the council.
If I may, Ethan.
Yeah, please.
I would like to share what I shared with Group B in the previous session, which is the delegate council is us. It's the people here. We get to create it, to guide it, to give it its purpose and its meaning. And then NGS is backing this. They're providing the framework around which this delegate council can operate. And they want to know, NGS wants to know what it is that societies and organizations need. So that's what gets fed up to NGS. But NGS also is providing this framework for this independent delegate council. So again, further and continued participation is up to you, and it becomes what you make it. So I just wanted to put that out there, that this is not just an NGS thing, dictated thing. It is, the delegate council is independent, and the communication does go both ways. It's like NGS is reaching out to organizations, not just societies, but organizations, to say, how can we help? We are all part of this larger genealogical field. How can we help?
To dovetail on what Elisa just mentioned, we're kind of the middleman, or we're the relay between NGS and our societies or our libraries.
I thought that the brochure that was sent out earlier was helpful, and I intend to send that out to my council members and anybody else that asks for it, because I don't think that the rank and file genealogist that happens to be involved in their local or state society realizes why NGS is an important organization to be involved in or aware of as well. And so I think that the brochure kind of outlined that in a easy to digest way. And I think everybody should probably share that so that they do want to participate. I mean, I would say that a lot of our members in Augusta are not a member of the NGS, and wouldn't realize that they might find something of interest in the NGS magazine that comes out regularly or NGS quarterly. So I think part of our role would be to keep that communication and going to show why NGS is valuable to the rank and file genealogist and thereby promoting genealogy for the individual ultimately.
I think Eric's got a great point, like something that says, and this month this organization is doing this, and in keeping our society, I guess, interested in funding our cooperation, because it's important to me, it's important to the board, but I don't know that as an individual everybody sees the importance of the organization being part of it. And maybe I'm misspeaking. I can't speak for our society members in whole.
Well, I guess I would challenge that a little bit, because part of what we want to hear from the delegates is, how you're going to utilize this network that we're creating to derive value yourself as an organizational leader. And then theoretically, there's value that would be translated back to your organization through your role as a delegate. So again, the framework of being a convener and the ability for the organization and the delegate council itself at large, the consortium of all the organizational representatives to influence the strategic objectives and the initiatives of NGS. So that, it's an oversimplification, but I see those as the two primary vehicles for the organization that you represent deriving value from this relationship with NGS. And how you interact, is largely kind of up to you. That's kind of the show up takeaway from the collaboration presentation, is that the ability for you to derive value is largely up to you to be a proactive participant in the framework that is being created. And some of the resources, largely in kind of the governance space, at least for now, are readily accessible and available to help you build a better, more efficient, more high functioning organization.
Yeah, Ethan, if I could for a second. So as I'm taking notes to report back, so we've talked about organizing it by size, but we also had the questions of how do you define small and how do you define large? But we also just talked about like location. So I'd like to ask whether you guys think organizing by geography or location would be beneficial, or see any benefits in that at all?
Dawn, this is Alan. And I certainly think that there's a great need to have, like, by state or by, geographic Midwest, because a lot of times there are issues within a state. Some states report up to a state organization. Illinois is not one of those states. So many of the genealogical societies are not members of the state society. So, at that point, NGS, offers a great value to the individual societies. So if they can see people that are neighbors or close in the same vicinity, I think that would be a great asset. If taxation or nonprofit status are questions for a particular state, it's going to be, all by state law, and only that state genealogical society or organizations within the state can answer those kind of questions.
It's very true.
I would think that it would be kind of a self-selected thing. Like if NGS could be the vehicle for Georgia and South Carolina to have an affinity group that would meet from time to time, or just Georgia, I'd probably join it. You know, it might not be a large group, but it could be a very effective group. But the other thing, again, looking from what local and state societies provide, we have a very mobile society. I mean, 50 years ago, pretty much everybody stayed in their original location close to where their ancestors were. Not everybody, but that was more common. Now, everybody's just everywhere. And so if you're doing research, you probably need to do it in other states, even beyond your region. So, you know, people may, the geography is important in some instances, but in other instances, it just depends on what you're doing. I would imagine if you're in Florida, everybody's from everywhere. So they may not be interested in specific records in Florida, but they may. So I don't exactly know how, I'm not stating this very well, but I'm just thinking about the dispersed nature of our society today, that geography is important in some aspects, but in some cases, maybe not.
I can address that. I'm in Oregon, and I told my society, I have no Oregon ancestry, not a stitch. The military put us here in the Northwest. All of my family's elsewhere, so it's the same thing that Eric's mentioning. I also think that having groups of specific areas, so maybe the Pacific Northwest, there are a number of us on the call from Oregon, and I suspect some Washington and Idaho folks here as well. So a group of that would be great. But I still think topic is important, and that could be covered across the entire country. Region has nothing to do with a specific topic that people might be interested in knowing more about.
Do you define?
And I think that's where, oh, go ahead.
Do you define topic as being different from special interests?
No, I would say it's the same thing. So it's back to my comment earlier about some people are going to want to know more about technology. Some are going to want to know more about education or training. Others are going to want to know more about, you know, board development, things like that.
So as opposed to a group interested in Irish genealogy or German genealogy or whatever.
Exactly, Dean. That's my thought anyway. So.
I'm from the Midwest, obviously in Omaha, and I don't have many relatives west of here. All of mine came from the East. So, you know, anything I can gain from belonging to or knowing people in Pennsylvania, Indiana, Ohio, right, and Illinois is very beneficial to me.
Absolutely.
I agree with Deb that having a topic groups would be best, because we have different things that we need to learn about.
Right.
And
are those personal goals or organizational goals?
Both.
Real quick, what topics do you see to be the most needed?
I'd say listening to the sessions so far this morning, technology is huge, but I also think volunteers is huge. I think education is a big one. And as a trainer for 40 years, education and technology go together in my mind now that we're in the Zoom era.